All right, so welcome to my long form podcast. This podcast doesn't have a name yet, but it's going to be something I'm going to be doing that's going to be more long form. And in this first introductory episode, we're going to be going through an intro to credit cards, credit card rewards, bonuses, reasons to use credit cards, the risks, the rewards, everything like that. Just a simple intro to credit cards, a very, very polarizing thing in finance that many people are against. Many people increasingly are understanding and taking a liking to. And I'm just going to be going through on a very like rudimentary level, just like some of the basics and an intro to it. So if you enjoy this kind of longer form style, let me know and we'll get right into it. So, credit cards. Why to use it in the first place, right? Credit cards are mainly, traditionally, for building credit. So, credit you're going to need for getting loans, and loans that could be for houses, cars, are the more traditional things for getting loans, but they could also be used for businesses, building businesses, which we'll get into a little bit later. But that's like the traditional reason to get credit cards is to build credit, to get, better interest rates, to get those loans, right? So your credit score takes, like time to build. That's one of the big things you have to understand with credit coming out the gate, is that your credit score takes a while to build. For me, when I first got my first credit card and I first got my first FICO, I started at a 720, I believe, or maybe like a 710. Might have been more than like a 720, honestly. It was like a good score, right? It was over 700, maybe like around 720, but it was pretty good, right? But I was also paying it off on time, not carrying balances, and it was like 6 months before I got a FICO score. So it obviously was going to be like a good score, right? What people don't understand too with the scores is that unless you're really doing like bad, practices with your credit card, like not paying it off, carrying balances, and doing it bad like that, you're gonna have a over 700. Sub 700 credit scores, especially, like particularly like sub 690, 680, like you gotta really be like, messing up and not paying on time, like really doing stuff wrong, carrying balances for you to have that type of credit score, which is basically like a bad credit score. They say, I think from FICO themselves, they say like a 680 and above is considered good. But yeah, nonetheless, like anything under that is like you gotta really be messing up. That's the thing people don't get. And a lot of what credit repair companies do is all they do is just, for the most part, take off your negative, marks on your credit report, missed payment, etc. Those things, they just take those off of your report, which is how your score grows so much. Somebody with good credit cannot boost their score 1, 2, 300 points, but somebody with bad credit can do that somewhat easy because they just have to remove these negative things off of their report, so they can go from whatever 500, 600, 400, as low as it gets, whatever those numbers are, and just remove these negative things off of their report, and that score is going to go up like crazy because now it doesn't have all of these negative points on the report. But if you're not in that bad situation, then it's going to be a very slow road to go from 710 to 730, 730, 750, 780, then eventually to 800 and above. So that's one of the things to remember. And like I said, you should not have under a 700 unless you're like doing really bad with your credit. Now, one of the big part of this channel is credit card rewards. That was kind of one of the main points I wanted to talk about on this podcast episode. Cashback, points, miles, they all are in the same family, but they work differently. Miles is usually reserved for just airlines. Those are airline miles, Delta miles, AA Advantage miles from American Airlines, etc. And then there's points. Points is going to be for, Amex, Chase UR points, Amex MR points, Citi, etc. Pretty much most, if not all, the banks by now have their own, points, point systems that you can earn from their credit cards, and then cashback, which is, the one everybody knows. These are going to be things that you can leverage with your credit cards. You just have to know the best cases to use them. There's, things like the Amex trifecta, Chase trifecta, a lot of setups, to maximize your points, miles, cashback in a particular bank, with a particular bank, or, all different types of ways to use them, running credit card setups based off, having your card that's best for gas, best for grocery, etc. There's tons of different ways to do it, right? And then you got the travel perks. Travel perks is going to be a big thing with credit cards. Lounges, hotel status, free bags, travel credits. These are going to be, I would say, like a tier above the cashback, points, miles, because those are more, entry level. Even if you don't travel that much, care that much about, getting into credit cards. Those things are, you can still benefit from them, accrue them, and, it's very simple, right? Now, with the travel perks, those are like a little bit above, right? And those are going to be for frequent travelers at a minimum, right? Then there's going to be other benefits like fraud protection, purchase protection, extended warranty, rental car insurance, a bunch of things that credit cards can give you as well. And it's going to depend on the credit card, that it's going to give you, different benefits. That's one of the things I personally like a lot about credit cards, and that really interests me in it. In the beginning was the different types of credit cards. There's so many different types of credit cards, with different benefits and advantages that it feels like kind of like a sport or like a game, being able to be like, I'm going to run this setup, or, in this situation, I want to go to, this lounge at the airport, etc. And you have all these different types of credit cards to choose from, to get the best benefit in each sector. So that's one of the things that you have to remember when you're getting into credit cards, is there's a lot of variability within each credit card. So the main credit card banks are going to be your Chase, Amex, Capital One, Citi, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Discover, and I would put US Bank in there as well. That's one that, a lot of people don't really think about, but they have really good cards. So Chase, I would say, Chase is the biggest bank like in the world, so I'd probably put them as the number one. They also have like the most credit cards out of any bank. I don't know the actual number, right? But I feel like they have the most. They have a ton of partnered cards which are credit cards that the bank partners with certain brands. Like Chase has Amazon credit cards. Chase has cards with Southwest Airlines, United Airlines, etc. That's what partner cards are. Chase has a ton of credit cards, and they're pretty beginner friendly as well. Like I said, they're the biggest bank in the world, so a lot of people have them. They bank with them, when they turn 18, type of thing. So that's Chase. Amex is definitely gonna be the best for premium perks, and traveling, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know if it's that much debatable, but for me, yeah, Amex would be probably number one in that space. And to me, they're my favorite credit card brand. The thing with Amex too is that a lot of people don't even realize that Amex is like super accessible. Most people think it's very luxury and like, invite only, hard to get. Amex is like one of the easiest credit cards to get. They love accepting new applicants, more than Chase, more than Cap One. Like Amex really is open, and so they're easy to get. A lot of their credit cards. So yeah, that'd be what I say about Amex. Capital One, they're very simple as well, beginner friendly, easy to use miles. They have some very good credit cards, and they're kind of ramping up in the credit card space, from where they were, like 5+ years ago. They're really ramping up. They're making lounges. They're really trying to compete now with the Chases and the Amexes. Citi, good for everyday earning, cashback points. They're kind of simple as well. Wells Fargo, again, beginner friendly. But Wells Fargo, I would say they're kind of hard to get their credit cards. I've talked about this in previous videos. Their credit cards are a little bit harder to get. They're one of the stingier banks. And then Bank of America is one of the best. I think, I don't know if I made a video on it about how I don't like Bank of America, but Bank of America is pretty good if you invest a lot with them, and if you bank with them. If you already bank with them, you have checking and especially savings, brokerage through Merrill Lynch. They can be really good and really beneficial to somebody who banks with them already. If not, they could be like a pain to deal with. But they do have some good credit cards. They have the Hawaiian and Alaska Airlines credit card, Atmos. Their premium travel card is not great, but it's not terrible either. Like Bank of America is like a weird one, and they're not the easiest to get approved for either. Then Discover's super beginner friendly. If you haven't gotten like freaking 20 things in the mail about getting a Discover credit card, I don't know what's up with you, because I feel like they send everybody like 20 things in the mail about getting a Discover credit card. Yeah, Discover, they're very simple though. They have really good beginner credit cards, but not the best. They don't really have anything like luxurious travel cards, but they do have like solid beginner friendly cards. And then US Bank has really underrated cards, honestly. I don't remember the names, but the red one, they have the US Bank Gold card. They got that red one. It's like red and white. Like US Bank has a couple of good credit cards. Like a couple good like travel credit cards with good rewards. Not the easiest to get approved for though, but they got some cards on them. And the last one I forgot was Barclays. Barclays is like super underrated. They have a 624 rule, which is that you can't get approved for one of their cards. If you've gotten approved for 6 or more cards in the past 24 months, like the Chase 524 rule. But Barclays has a lot of good cards. They have a lot of partner cards with a lot of of the airlines that you don't really think about, like Frontier, JetBlue. Like they got partner card with a Choice One Hotels, which is like a random one, but the intro bonus on there is like crazy. I seen it's like 7 nights free or something like that. Like Barclays, if you don't know, you should check them out. Like they got some good cards. So those are like the main banks to look at when it comes to reward travel and getting benefits from credit cards. So the main reason to get into credit cards or to use credit cards, regardless of travel rewards and the benefits, right, I would say is you get value for using a credit card. You don't get any value for using a debit card. Whoops. So I use, like, for example, I use credit 99% of the time. If I can use credit, I am going to use credit. I always use credit, right? I don't carry debt and stuff like that, right? Because, like I said, when you use a credit card, you get value that you don't get with a debit card. And I really think the only justification for not using a credit card is the user does not have discipline. If you don't have discipline in this context, financially with the credit cards, then okay, just use the debit card, because you'll get carried away. You'll get in. You'll get in like big amounts of debt, right? Cool. But if that's not the case, I don't think there's any reason to not be using a credit card for every purchase. Like, that gets you rewards. Obviously, people can say, oh, you only get 1% back. You only get this back. It accumulates, right? And again, if it's every purchase, it's purchases you're going to make regardless. Like, why not get something back for it? That's going to be, like, to me, the overarching reason why to use credit cards, right? And like I said, the only rebuttal to that could be if that person doesn't have discipline. Okay, then it could go wrong. If they do, there's no recourse against that. Besides that, you build credit without having to get a loan and pay interest and all that. You get to build credit. Very, very good perk of using credit cards. You get protection, more protection than a debit card. I've seen people kind of say, oh no, it's the same thing with debit card. Debit card is kind of objectively going to be harder to get protection with your purchases than a credit card. Credit card is the bank's money. That's one of the things you might have heard for a long time with credit card. Why use credit? Credit is the bank's money. You're using the bank's money. I've done things with credit cards like that I can't even that weren't even like the right. They've given me my money back when I wasn't even in the right. When I was in the wrong. Like I've like, you can abuse it, because again, not encouraging it, but a long time ago when I first started with credit cards, I realized, like, I seen, like, okay, they really will just give you your money back in a very loose way, right? because again, it's the bank's money. The bank is going to be way more persistent with their money than if it's in checking. Checking, it is does not have that type of protection. Travel benefits, again, going into the rewards. Obviously, some people might not care about travel. You'll have that. But again, a lot of this stuff is just free money, free points, whatever. Now, again, you pay, but it's going to be money you are going to spend regardless. So it is essentially free points, free cash back, free money, basically, free trips, etc. Right? You see where it kind of goes. So yeah, that's like those would be my reasons like to use credit cards. For me, it's pretty freaking simple. Like, you're gonna get free money, free points, free travel. Again, not that it's like super easy, not that you get to go to Japan after, just for buying groceries. No. But it's not that simple, but it's not completely untrue either. Like, there's people that are doing it, right? So again, like I said, for me, it's like pretty simple reason to use a credit card. I really think the debit card thing, again, unless you just don't have the discipline, there's just no reason in 2026 to be using debit cards. Like, debit cards, it's just not it. Like, credit cards are just gonna be way better. And then go to the risks. So risks, like I was saying, with the discipline, that's gonna be the number one thing. Everything I've ever said with credit cards is assuming the person has discipline. If they don't, it goes all out the window. Don't even worry about any of those, travel points. Don't even, maybe get a credit card to build credit, but just get one card and have it super regulated, and just don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about no damn Amex, no damn Chase, Marriott Bonvoy, none of that. Just, it would be a whole other suggestion. Like, everything I say about credit cards is assuming the person is disciplined. So that's the main thing, right? You could get into crazy debt if you're not disciplined, you don't know what you're doing. And knowing what you're doing is another big thing with credit cards. Like I said, there's a lot of nuance with the travel. People hear, traveling and travel rewards and this and that. They don't know the different types of cards, the way different points work. That's like a whole other podcast episode in itself, of like explaining points and redemption and the different ways of that. They, points having different value and things like that, transferring, etc. So that discipline, knowing what you're doing, if you don't have those things, you could really mess yourself up and get into debt. That's going to be obviously any detractor to credit cards. One of the first sentences, they're going to be talking about debt, and it's because it's hurt a lot of people. That's a fact. Credit card debt has, put a lot of people down, put a lot of people in debt, and there's no such thing as, or I guess there is a such thing as debit card debt, but it's not the same thing. You get me? Credit cards have a unique type of thing, right? Any the interests are very high nowadays. Again, I have a billion credit cards. I don't know the interest rate on none of them because I don't pay them. But I have seen, like, I'll see out the corner of my eye, and when you apply for a credit card, it says like 24 to 48% interest or something. I know those interest rates are super high. And I think they're only going higher. So if you do get late on them, going to the credit card debt being dangerous point, the interest rates are like nothing else, out there when you do have to pay interest. And then, you can also hurt your credit score. Like I said, you're not just gonna get into debt. You're gonna mess up your credit score as well. Annual fees are another thing. A lot of people, beginners and people kind of on the outside looking in, that's something they already don't mess with, is annual fees. I see a lot of people who are completely anti annual fees, which is not the right mentality to have, but a lot of people are like that. But so, most people aren't gonna get but if you like a card with annual fee, and then annual fee might hurt somebody, having that payment, which again, it's not really the smartest thing, because you should have had it probably squared away prior to getting the card, right? Because you know how much the annual fee is. But that is something else to think about, especially with the cards like Platinum Card. That's like a $895 annual fee now. Some of the Chase Sapphire Reserve is like $600-$700, something like that. With the higher luxury cards, those annual fees are pretty high. So, those are the main risks, I would say. There's not a ton of risks. They're very simple. It's the debt. It's the messing up your credit score. It's the not really knowing what you're doing, and, the variety of credit cards and all that, kind of making you, messing up your finances, stuff like that. Those are the main things, but they're very bad, right? Messed up credit score and debt has been something that's hurt a lot of people perpetually, and that's why credit cards have been looked at as such a boogeyman historically. But again, to me, it's a very, very simple thing. Like I said, this episode is supposed to be like an intro to credit card rewards. So the last thing I'll say in terms of like an introduction is, if you want to get into credit card rewards, learn about credit for like a little bit, at least some days, some weeks. Even though it is like very simple with acquiring the credit cards, using the points, it's not like the most complicated thing. I do feel like beginners can, and they do it. So you don't have to learn like that so much because you have to learn how to use it, but it's just like learning the structure of it, learning the differences with the banks, and setups. But man, I always say like the best starter travel credit card is probably the Adventure X by Capital One. Really good travel credit card, especially for starters. Has a $395 annual fee, but with the perks, it pays for the card like easily. That's a really good card to start. My first credit card that I got, my first unsecured credit card, was the Amex Blue Cash Everyday card. That card was really good for cash back. That's one I would recommend. No annual fee on that one, which is another reason why it was really good for as a starter credit card. And then Chase Freedom Unlimited, or Chase Freedom Flex, another good beginner card. Yeah, again, for cashback. But in terms of travel, I would say the Venture X, because that's the thing with travel. That stuff could be more expensive. The Sapphire Reserves and the Chase Platinum, or Amex Platinum, Amex Gold, those would be more expensive. That's why the Venture X is so, I think it's that's why I always say it's the best beginner travel card, because even though it is $395 annually, the benefits outweigh the $395 easily, and then you get that intro into all the, you know, all the you know, those travel luxuries, right? Lounges, it has priority pass. I think it has clear. It should have clear. Or it might. I'm not sure if it has clear. But I think it has a TSA pre-check. I know, like, it has like most if not all of, you know, the basics, like when it comes to travel credit card that Sapphire Reserve has, Amex Platinum. Not all of those perks, but has a lot of the main ones like Priority Pass. And if you don't know, Priority Pass, using that a couple times a year is gonna have a ton of value. So yeah, that's like my intro to credit card rewards. It's really something that more people should get into because of the benefits to it. We didn't even get to in this video about using credit cards for business. The loans, the money you can get, interest rates on credit cards, you know, balance transfer credit cards, how a lot of people are using credit cards to build businesses. That's a whole nother amazing thing with credit cards. Credit cards are it's just one of those things, like, it is a really, really, really advantageous thing. You just gotta learn about it. Like, it's one of those things people make to be the boogeyman, but there's so much value there. So yeah, that's my intro to credit card rewards. Thank you for watching first episode of the currently unnamed podcast. See you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching.